Hello and welcome back to the Out of Spec podcast. Toyota has released a $15,000 EV in China, and we're not going to get it in the US. Let's talk about it. Now, for the 100th video, I get to tell you about an EV that we are not getting in North America. And this is a pattern that we see time and time again, especially in China, where they have their own manufacturing facilities. We have tariffs when it comes to Chinese imports, and it just makes it hard for us to get vehicles produced, manufactured in China. And so China has their own automotive market. We get a little bit of what Europe gets, but they also have their own automotive market. We in the United States have our own automotive market. Now, we know Toyota has the BZ4X, which is their mid-sized SUV, similar to the Toyota RAV4. But this BZ3X, so 4X, now we have 3X. By the way, Toyota, horrible names. This is too much, right? We have the BZ4X, we have the BZ3X, we have the BZ3. We're going to get the BZ crossover. We're going to get all these BZ vehicles. And let me just kind of preface this here before we talk about the BZ3X. I don't think any other automaker in the world has as many electric prototypes or concepts as Toyota. We saw pretty much every vehicle that's going to replace Toyota's lineup. They had a vehicle that's going to replace the RAV4, right? The BZ4X. But the Yaris, the Corolla, the Tacoma, their take on like a smaller FJ Cruiser. I saw in Japan, personally, I went to the Japanese auto show in 2023, and I saw their like Ford Maverick kind of competitor, a smaller city truck that was supposed to be EV. It looked really good. Like it didn't look like a stupid concept or prototype vehicle where it's like these extravagant screens and really unrealistic body type. It looked like a production ready vehicle. And Toyota has a ton of this. They've got vehicles that are going to replace the Supra that are electric and the Highlander. Point is, they have a lot of concept EVs, prototype EVs, and Toyota is still kind of far behind when it comes to actually making them. But let's run through the facts of the BZ3X. So this thing is 181 inches. I'm going to go on the size first because when you look at it, I thought that this was the size of an EV9 or, an Ioniq 9, a Gravity. No, this is actually smaller than a Tesla Model Y in length by 6 inches. And in terms of height, it's 0.7 inches taller. So about the same height as a Model Y and a little bit shorter than a Model Y. However, due to its non-sloping roof, it has a very almost boxier shape. It just looks like a way bigger vehicle, but it technically is not. Now, estimated starting price, $15,000. This vehicle got 10,000 orders within the first hour of it releasing in China, and it apparently broke Toyota's website, and they had to shut it down and refresh it and put back on the servers for people to order more. That's how many orders this thing got, because $15,000, I want to say here, $15,000 even in China is absurd, right? We have vehicles like the BYD Seagull, which is like $12,000 to $15,000, and that is like half the size of this vehicle. That's a small, compact vehicle. Versus this is a larger mid-size SUV, and it's the same price as what we see, compact vehicles in China. So even in China, these prices are kind of absurd. This also undercuts the BZ4X in China in the US by quite a huge margin, right? The BZ4X in the United States is like $42,000. I believe with the new model year, it's like $39,900. But this BZ3X totally undercuts the BZ4X in the United States and in China. Now, how they're able to do this, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that almost none of it has to do with Toyota development. Now, we know how hard it is for legacy automakers in China. Toyota, Honda, Nissan especially are losing huge market share in China. You can actually watch a lot of our videos on the Out of Spec Reviews channel, and Kyle going through China just noticed that there are not a lot of new legacy vehicles. He wasn't noticing a lot of Mercedes, BMW, Volkswagen. And people are now buying these newer Chinese EVs from the likes of Geely, with even Volvo, which is kind of legacy, but with Zeekr and Neo and Envo and Tesla. There are a ton of other automakers out there that have these software-defined vehicles, way better pricing, way better software technology. They're just better packages. And so you're seeing automakers like Toyota losing heaps of market share. So who do they go to ensure that they're building good vehicles? Well, they got to go to these, these Chinese automakers and say, "Hey, help us out." So this BZ3X has a motor. The motor and battery come directly from BYD. This is actually the same thing we see in the BZ3 sedan in China. It shares the battery and motor from BYD vehicles off the shelf. They buy that from BYD, have it inside of the vehicle. It makes production for Toyota really simple. Hi, editing Isaiah here. I actually got that wrong. It's not BYD that's providing the powertrain, the batteries, the motor for the BZ3X. It's actually Guangzhou Automotive Group, also known as GAC. They are a Chinese manufacturer that have made vehicles with Toyota in the past, Honda, and even Stellantis. They provide Chinese vehicles in China. Now, they have good EV innovation. They have the powertrain, the motors, the technology. They've been doing this for quite some time, like BYD, which furthers the point that none of this work, none of this technology is really Toyota's. They're taking this from an existing professional, existing automaker in the space, a manufacturer, and kind of putting it off as their own, which allows Toyota to sell vehicles in China and make themselves seem like a more competitive brand and ensure that they are keeping their market share. But on the flip side, it again reiterates the point that Toyota just doesn't have the technology. They don't have the innovation. They don't have the work done to provide excellent and competitive EVs in the space. The BZ3X will only be front-wheel drive and have a 0 to 60 of about 7 to 8 seconds. And so in terms of the powertrain, it really isn't a marvelous vehicle, right? There will be 3 battery options: a 50 kilowatt hour battery, 58, and a 67 kilowatt hour battery. And these are going to give you ranges on CLTC, which is China's standard for EPA, for their version of EPA. So we have EPA, right? Europe has WLTP, China has CLTC. That's going to get you a range between 267 to 379 CLTC miles. Compared to the real world, we've noticed that CLTC is very inaccurate when it comes to real world conditions. And with the vehicle of this nature and size, it isn't, a slope back mid-size SUV. It'll probably have a range somewhere between 250 to 300 miles realistically. But on the powertrain front as a whole, just 200 horsepower, this thing isn't packing a punch. This isn't going to be your high performance vehicle. It's $15,000 starting price. It's just meant to be a good value option. I don't see how Toyota is making money on this, but somehow they're able to produce this. On the tech side, it's going to have a 15-inch, well, technically a 14.6-inch display for the main infotainment screen. So a giant screen like we see in Tesla and a lot of other Chinese OEMs. It'll have an NVIDIA Drive AGX Orin chip, which is what we also see in some of standard of Chinese vehicles. This vehicle also has LiDAR on the higher trim vehicles. And so it's on the powertrain side kind of slackish, but on the technology side, it is just a good vehicle. I mean, LiDAR doesn't mean it's a good vehicle, but it's going to have the hardware to have capable ADAS. In fact, on Toyota's Chinese website, they have pretty good examples of what Toyota's ADAS with the BZ3X is able to do. And honestly, it's pretty capable. I mean, this thing is moving around all sorts of obstacles, motorcycles. It seems to be a pretty comprehensive highway driver assistance system. Of course, what we're looking for are in-city driver assistance systems, and that's where a lot of driver assistance systems are moving around the world, particularly in China. But now they also showed an example of the BZ3X doing some urban driving, which makes me think maybe the BZ3X will be capable of urban driving. It'll be pretty interesting to see how this kind of rolls out with the BZ3X and Toyota as a whole. But it has the ADAS. It has this giant 15-inch infotainment screen, which from the videos, really smooth software. This is nothing like Toyota's current vehicles, whether internal combustion engine or EV. This is nothing like Toyota's BZ3, which their sedan, nothing like it. this just seems like a new generation of for Toyota, particularly in China. Now, like the BZ3, I think this thing is just going to be a taxi hauler. In China, the BZ3, the sedan, is a very common taxi. It has a good price, decent range. It is just a good taxi EV, right? Something that you're going to buy in the huge numbers and groves for fleets. I think the BZ3X might go down that same road, just being a really good fleet vehicle. But with its price and a lot of its technology features, I think this could appeal to a lot of just young and everyday Chinese buyers. It'll be interesting to see how this compares to the Model Y in China. Again, $15,000 starting price compared to the Tesla Model Y, which has a $30,000 to $40,000 starting price in China. So this is half of that. Similar size, almost a little bit less of a range. Of course, it is more of a boxier design, only front wheel drive. Even with Toyota's updated software, I don't imagine it's as good as what you would see in a Tesla or any other Chinese OEM for that matter. So it'll be interesting to see what the year looks like in terms of sales. This is expected to go in production this March 2025. They first unveiled this vehicle in December. It comes from a concept that Toyota, another one of Toyota's concepts that they unveiled in 2023 called the Flex Space concept, the BZ Flex Space concept. And then it turned into this full form production vehicle. And this will kind of fill in Toyota's lineup in China. They have the Lexus RZ in China. They have the BZ4X. They have the BZ3. They also are now having the BZ3X. They're also soon going to introduce their BZ crossover, which is another concept that they unveiled in like 2023, the BZ Sport crossover concept, and pretty decent looking vehicle. It reminds me of the Prius that we get here in the United States. But clearly, Toyota's trying to be more competitive in China because they are losing market share there. In fact, in January of this year, Toyota sold 3,510 units of the BZ3 sedan in China. That's a 45% increase year over year. So the BZ3 is actually, I think, doing quite well in sales. We have a lot of automakers from like NIO and Zeekr, which are selling about the same amount of units, and they have multiple models. And so again, as I've mentioned, the BZ3 is a very popular taxi and kind of fleet vehicle. So that's likely why we're seeing such good sales in China. The BZ3, 50 kilowatt hour battery, LFP. It's a fleet vehicle meant for those 100% chargers, right? Just a reliable vehicle that you're going to be using over and over for fleets. Now, moving away from China, by the way, the BZ3 and BZ3X are not sold in Europe and are likely never going to be sold in Europe, but Europe does have some cool Toyota EVs. They have the Urban Cruiser. Now, this Urban Cruiser is a small, I want to say almost compact SUV. I wouldn't exactly call it mid-sized, but it does have a mid-sized price with an estimated price about $32,500. Expected to kind of go up from there, touching $45,000. But 50 kilowatt hour battery option as well as a 61 kilowatt hour battery option. That's going to give you about 200 to 250 miles of estimated range. That's Toyota's figures. That's not with WLTP or CLTC or EPA. That's what just Toyota gives. It'll be offered in front wheel drive and all-wheel drive, 7.5 second 0 to 60, but it isn't using the new software and crazy features that we see in this BZ3X. And this is going to be sold exclusively in Europe. Maybe we could get this in the United States, but it's looking like so far this is just going to be in Europe. 150 kilowatt charging. Now, compared to the BZ4X, the Urban Cruiser is like 12 inches shorter in terms of length. And then in terms of height, it's actually about the same height as the BZ4X. But of course, this is a smaller vehicle with a bit of a smaller footprint. That's also expected to have production starting this year, 2025, in Europe. And it's just another car that we're not going to be getting over here in the United States. And it doesn't stop there. Toyota also has a van that they sell in Europe called the Pro Ace, which two battery options, a 50 kilowatt hour and a 75 kilowatt hour battery option. And this is just another EV, again, that we don't get in the United States. But with the 75 kilowatt hour battery on WLTP, you're looking at about 205 miles of range. So EPA, that's probably like 175. And then with the 50 kilowatt hour battery, WLTP, you're getting about 142 miles of range, which EPA is probably like 110, 120 miles of range. So really not the most efficient vehicle, even with, a 50 or 75 kilowatt hour battery. But this is Europe, particularly the United Kingdom is where most of these are sold. And so you're likely not having to, go extremely long distances. It is an urban commercial van. But of course, that's not it. Europe is getting their BZ compact SUV, another one on top of the urban cruiser, March 12th. So this March, in just a couple days, right? They just got the urban cruiser like 2-3 weeks ago, right? The urban cruiser we're just talking about. Now they're getting another SUV that's supposed to be unveiled, like with production like 2026 or something, March 12th. And so when that comes out, maybe we'll have some, US entry. Maybe we'll get it here in the United States, but it's going to be unveiled in Europe. So it's very unlikely that we're not going to get it in the United States. But if we do, of course, you'll see it here covered on the Out of Spec podcast. But everywhere but the United States get these cool EVs. Toyota has the BZ3X, the BZ3. Of course, every market gets the BZ4X, but it's the BZ4X. No offense, but it is, compared to Toyota's other vehicles, especially on paper, the BZ4X is like the worst one, okay? And that's what we get. But they have the BZ3X, the BZ3, BZ4X. Of course, we also get the Lexus RZ in every market around the world. And then you go over to Europe, they have their urban cruiser, and they're also getting this compact, as well as their Pro Ace commercial van. And so the market's continuing to grow, and hopefully, and really hopefully, we get some more cool EVs in the United States, like the Toyota compact urban truck, what they called their EPU concept. I love it. I love smaller trucks, right? I wish Ford would make the Maverick electric, but yeah, so many EVs across the world that we don't get. Do you guys like China content? I know all the time I'm on my phone or I'm going through the news of the day to talk about things for videos, and I'll come across some like crazy Chinese EV, and I don't want to like dangle, food in your face and be like, hey, look at this. Look what China gets. We don't get it. Do you guys like listening to topics about, Chinese EVs? Please let me know down in the comments below. Well, look, thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Isaiah. This is the Out of Spec podcast, and I will see you guys in the next one.